Hi, boys and girls. We're going to continue on with our social studies lessons today. We left off with remembering that we are now the 13 states of America. We no longer have the king. Thank goodness we won the war. Woohoo! And now we're going to continue on talking about who is going to make the laws for our new nation. So, what I want you to do is go ahead and take a look on my screen and let's refer back to what we just read about last week. So, the colonists were coming up with ways on how to rule our nation. So if we look at the first plan was the Virginia plan. So all the colonists in Virginia said, hey, I have an idea. How about Congress would be a group of people and we're going to make two houses, which means we're going to make two groups, and they would be based on the state's population. So all these big states get to send lots and lots of representatives to make the laws. But then New Jersey and Rhode Island were like, that's not fair. How come you get to send a lot of people and we get to only send one or two because we're a small state? And so New Jersey was like, listen, we have a new plan. I have a great idea. How about we come up with one house and everybody gets two people? So the question was, which plan was better? Well, the big states didn't like the New Jersey plan, and the little states didn't like the Virginia plan. So nobody was happy. Everybody wanted their way. So today we're going to work on page 392, and it's called Working Together, because the big states and the little states, you can't get everything that you want. You have to compromise. So go ahead and turn to page 392, and we're going to read that together. For weeks, the delegates argued about how the states should be represented in Congress. Finally, they realized that to reach an agreement, each side would have to compromise or give up something they wanted. The Great Compromise. The Committee of Delegates, which is a fancy word of Committee of Colonists, led by Roger Sherman of Connecticut and others, presented a new plan. This became known as the Connecticut Compromise. So they're like, listen. All right. Big states, little states, we have to compromise. We have to work together. The Connecticut Compromise was based on the idea of a two-house Congress. In one house, representation would be based on the population of each state. In the other house, each state would be equally represented. Either house could present a bill or an idea for a new law. However, both houses had to approve a bill before it became a law. So, Roger Sherman, he came up with a plan. He said, I have an idea. The little states love this plan, the New Jersey plan. The big states like the Virginia plan. So what are we going to do? We're going to put them together. We're going to smash them together. And both of you guys will get a little bit of what you want. So yes, we'll have one house that everybody gets two people. And yes, we'll have one house that is based on the states. Now, if you guys want to make a law, you can, but you have to work together to make the law. And there has to be a majority vote. Okay, so that's what that's saying. All right, back in the book. Delegates from the large states thought the compromise gave too much power to the small states. And to gain support of the large states, the committee added another idea. Only the House in which representation was based on population would be able to propose tax bills. The committee presented the Great Compromise, as it became known, to the convention. Not all the delegates agreed with it, but most wanted to keep working. On July 16, 1787, they approved the Great Compromise. So they're going to compromise. They're going to put both of these together, okay, and they're going to work together. Now remember, in the northern part of the colonies, slavery is actually abolished. But in the South, it's still happening because they have those huge plantation farms. Okay, we're on page 393. Under the Great Compromise, population would affect the representation of each state in Congress. This plan raised an important issue that troubled many people in the young nation, slavery. Delegates argued about whether African Americans should be counted when figuring each state's population. So they're deciding, should the slaves in the South be counted as population, or would they not be counted? Different points of view. Because the southern states had the largest number of enslaved people, Southern delegates wanted to count the slaves when figuring out how many representatives a state would have in Congress. That way, the Southern states could have more representation, okay, more representatives. So the people in the South are like, yeah, let's count all the slaves, because that means their population would be bigger, and a bigger population means you would get more representatives. You would get more people to choose the laws. But the Northern people, remember, they got rid of slavery. So the Northern people did not want slaves to be counted for representation. After all, these delegates argued slaves were not allowed to vote and did not hold any other rights of citizenship. Some delegates hoped that slavery would not continue. However, they knew that ending it would be difficult. So the North is like, no, slaves shouldn't count. They're not even allowed to vote. Because remember, back then, slaves and women were not allowed to vote just yet. Okay, and slavery's not over yet. So they still have those things. So the North and the South, they came up with a compromise. Okay, so the South says yes to slaves counting. The North says no, they should not count. So they're going to come up with a compromise, and they're going to say that, you know what, the slaves can count for a fraction. So they count them as a 3/5 compromise. The delegates finally agreed to count 3/5 of the total number of slaves in each state towards the number of representatives. After this issue was dealt with, some delegates still spoke out against slavery. Governor Morris of Pennsylvania called slavery the curse of heaven on the states where it prevailed or existed. So the slaves were actually only counted as a part of a vote. They were not even considered a whole vote. It was called a 3/5 compromise. All right, turn the page. We're on page 394. So some delegates were afraid that if the Constitution outlawed slavery or stopped states from importing slaves, then the Southern states would not approve it. To reach a compromise, the delegates agreed that Congress would not stop states from importing enslaved people from other countries before 1808. After 1808, Congress banned the slave trade with other countries. However, enslaved people still could be bought and sold within the United States. As a result, many enslaved people continue to be separated from their families. All right, let's read the purple words. What have we been working on yesterday and today, or last week and today? So instead of just fixing the Articles of Confederation, the delegates at the Constitutional Convention decided to write a new constitution. The Great Compromise resolved conflicts over representation in the government. So thanks to the Great Compromise, this was all the start of our Congress today. So today, we the people have Congress that makes laws for us. And Congress has actually two houses. So today we have a Senate where every state gets two people. So there's 50 states and there's two from every state. So there's 100 people that sit in the Senate. The second house is the House of Representatives based on the state's population. So there are 435 people today that help make our laws, and we call them the legislative branch. Okay, and what happens is they meet in big buildings like this in the U.S. Capitol, and they are the ones who create the laws for us. We call them the legislative branch. So because of all of this that we're reading in social studies today, in the 1800s, over 200 years ago, that is the beginning of the Congress we know today. The Congress, the group of people that make our laws. Okay, just a reminder, you can go back and re-listen to this video as many times as you like. Use your book and your video notes or what you remember from the video on your homework. If you have any questions, please ask me on Google Classroom. And I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will talk to you guys soon. All right, bye guys.